college campus at Wilmore, which touched me about as much as anything that's occurred in 34 years of news reporting. I know normally that when you're watching television, like everyone else, you have one eye perhaps on the paper, one eye on television, or one ear to someone else in the room, or perhaps you're fixing the evening meal. But for the next 2.5 minutes, I wish you'd stop everything you're doing, and I think you too are going to be impressed. It started at 10 o'clock yesterday morning. Chapel was scheduled to end at 11 o'clock yesterday morning. It didn't end at 11 o'clock yesterday morning. It didn't end at 11 o'clock last night. It didn't end at 11 o'clock this morning. In fact, as Jim and I took the air, it was still going on. Let's have a look and a listen.
Larry, this is quite an event here at Asbury. What does this mean to you?
Oh, I can't express it. I tell you, the Lord has been planning this for so long. The prayers have been going up in girls and the guys' dorms and all over the world, I tell you, and it's finally happened. And he let us know the day before it happened. He said, during a prayer meeting in our dorm, and he said, it's going to happen tomorrow. And it did. And he just opened it up and he let it fly. And that's all I can say. He told me that he wanted me to get up and say something. I said, the only way you're going to get me up is to kick me out of the seat. And he did. And I tell you, it's just blessed everybody. I'm not kidding you. The greatest outpouring of God's love and the Holy Spirit, and I can't express it. I tell you, I'm just amazed, and I'm glorifying His name. I'm praising His name today.
I'm Dennis Kinlaw, and I've been invited to share with you something of the story of how the Spirit of the Lord came to the campus of Asbury College in 1970. That morning of February 3rd in 1970, I got up early. I had to fly to Banff or to Calgary, Alberta, and that's a long ways from Wilmore, Kentucky. So I arose about 5, and by 6 o'clock I was in my car, drove to Louisville, and caught an 8 o'clock flight for Denver, and then a flight on up to Calgary. I landed in Calgary about 5 p.m. Calgary time. When I checked into the hotel agent behind the desk said to me, I have an emergency note for you. And so he handed me a slip of paper with a name on it and a telephone number that I was supposed to call. I took a look at the name and the telephone number and knew instantly that it was the dean of the college. Now, those were the days when college campuses were erupting, when they were locking presidents in their offices, and when they were rioting on campuses, and my first thought was, emergency, the dean, what's happened in my absence at Asbury? So 5 o'clock Calgary time was about 7 o'clock Wilmore time, Kentucky time. So I walked immediately across the corridor before I went to my room with a Canadian dime and put it in a telephone, and within 30 seconds I was able to get the dean. I caught him at home. He said to me, I have a problem, and I don't know quite how to handle it. And my blood pressure rose a little bit. He was a fellow who had done everything from run a one-room schoolhouse in the mountains of Kentucky to being an academic dean, and he could handle anything. I trusted him completely. And so he said, I have a problem, and I don't know how to handle it. So I said, what's that? He said, it's chapel. And I said, what do you mean, chapel? Well, he said, the chapel isn't over yet. And I said, would you repeat that, please? And he said, the morning chapel isn't over yet. I said, what do you mean it isn't over yet? It's 7 o'clock at night. He said, that's right. It isn't over yet. And I said, what happened? And then he told me. He was scheduled to speak that morning. And instead of speaking, he had given his witness. He never became a Christian until he was an adult and in the realm of education. And so he simply shared his witness. And after he had shared his witness, he opened it for other students in the student body to share what Christ was doing in their lives and what he was saying to them. There was a remarkable response. About 5 minutes before the hour for chapel was over, a philosophy professor turned to the dean, who had come down and was sitting on the front row in chapel, turned to him and said, God is here. If you give an invitation, there will be a response. He gave an invitation, and that started a response that lasted until the next Tuesday morning, a week later, at 8 o'clock, a week later, when we began classes again. Now, I was in Calgary, I was in Banff, Alberta, when I got this news. And he said to me, I have a question. He said, the TV people in Lexington, a city 15 miles from us, want to come out and video what is taking place here and use it on the TV stations and the news reports. And I could see cynical TV men coming into that sacred place and making a joke out of it. And so I said, keep them out. And he said, we've prayed about that. And we think we ought to let them in. And I said, well, I'm not there. You're there. And I trust you implicitly. But keep them reverent. Well, they let the TV people come in. And the TV people came. The man who headed the crew, when he came, he brought his wife. And that evening, when the 5 o'clock news came on, when he came to that clip, he said to the audience, he said, now I know that in this evening news, many of you are doing many things. Some of you ladies are preparing supper. Some of you men are reading the newspaper. Other young people, you're doing all sorts of things. I've been in the news reporting business for 34 years. I thought I had seen everything. But today I saw something that I have never seen before. And I would appreciate it if you'd stop whatever you're doing, put it down, and for the next 90 seconds look at this film clip. And so the story of the Asbury revival spread all over central Kentucky.
It all started when one student gave his testimony. That was followed by another, and the testimonies have been going ever since.
Hundreds of people from Kentucky, Indiana, and Michigan attended a testimony service on the campus of Asbury College in Wilmore.
And as it spread, people began coming in from all around. It was interesting to me, who was so far away, knowing about it only through the telephone. I will never, ever forget standing in a public telephone booth a day later as I called to find out what was taking place. Now, if you're not a Christian, you won't understand this. If you've never had an experience of the sense of the presence of God, you won't understand this. But in all of my life, I have never known a heavier sense of the presence of God than in that small telephone booth standing side of a roadway in Banff, Alberta, Canada. It was as if God himself came through the telephone line, and I was encompassed in God. Now, I want to say, part of my reaction to that was almost fear, Dick. There was an apprehension in me, lest anything be done, to grieve the Spirit. And also the question of, was I worthy, in any sense, to be a part of any of that? And could I respond as I ought to? There was that deep, intense consciousness that we were dealing with holy things, sacred things, even though I was far removed. Now, I didn't get back to the campus until early Friday morning. I landed in Louisville about 12 o'clock on Thursday night. I got in my automobile and drove to Wilmore. I've read the accounts in Finney's relating of the revivals in his day, of how when Finney would go through a city sometimes, people would come under a profound sense of the presence of God. The closer I got to Wilmore, the heavier that sense of the presence of God got on me. When I drove my car 2:30 in the morning to the campus, I didn't go home. I went to the auditorium, and I parked. And as I came walking up the steps, I walked very slowly. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I knew I was walking in to the presence of God. You don't do that casually. I walked very slowly up the steps. There were two students standing on the steps. One of them was a student leader.